Kevin, thanks so much for joining me. Let's just first start, what's your backstory?
I don't actually have any formal training in development or coding or anything like that. I originally heard of the Oculus Rift Kickstarter back in, 2013, 2012. I don't quite remember off the top of my head. But I didn't get into it then. But in 2014, I saw a guy who had a DK2 unit, but I just knew what the technology could bring. Usually when people ask me, why I'm so into virtual reality, I can usually, I grew up watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. And so, usually people kind of nod and go along. And so if I kind of think that they're going along with me, all I usually have to say is the holodeck, and they, completely understand from that point on. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted the holodeck. That would be the end all, kind of entertainment or training. Just, you could make your whole own world, to whatever you wanted it to be.
Fits in with the theme of this series is people create technology. Technology doesn't move on its own. And so folks grow up watching Star Trek. They want to see all the devices that are being used in the series, whether it's Star Wars, Star Trek, or even Ghost in the Shell the original has a lot of like Google Maps type stuff going on in it. Would we be playing with the technology that we're playing with now without those stories inspired us?
Yeah, that is, always something to kind of think about, of how sci-fi influences us, or possibly not. One little side note that I think is kind of funny. Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about how when he was a little kid and watching Star Trek, the original Star Trek, he believed that we would have these communicators and cell phones and everything. But the one thing that he absolutely did not believe he would ever see in his lifetime are automatic doors that, open, which now is just such a simple thing. You walk up to it and the door automatically opens for you. He never would have thought that he would see that in his lifetime.
We would definitely have portable communicators, but automatic doors, no way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how did that lead to what you're working on currently, both in terms of the Immersive Technology Conference and getting involved in the local Houston AR/VR scene and becoming an organizing member of that?
So after I got my DK2 unit, like I said, just to see what else, what other people were doing with it, because like I said, I had no actual experience in developing or coding. I just wanted to see what other people were doing with it. I just did a quick little Google search for Houston and virtual reality, and which led me to Houston VR, which was set up by Eric Liga and one other member who isn't really too active anymore. So Eric Liga is kind of the forefather, if you will, of the Houston virtual reality community. I could say. Well, when I saw that was kind of going on, I went out to a meetup, and I can't remember if it was actually the first or second meetup. One of the other guys who was usually up there, who had a DK2 unit of himself, they kind of announced that they were looking into starting a conference in Houston for the business and industrial applications for VR and AR, and kind of gave a open call to see if anyone was interested in working on this with them. And I immediately had to jump on that chance, to get in there. But like I said, again, since I had no actual background of development or coding or anything for it, I felt like I could at least try and do this to push virtual reality and augmented reality forward. Because, as of right now, it's just a little grasp of what the holodeck is, you know, and the holodeck is very far away, I know, but you know, it's at least a start. And so the more that we get the community behind it and the more we get business behind it, you know, the faster it's going to develop.
Absolutely. So I think it's really interesting how you're highlighting the fact that you don't have the dev experience. And one of the things in Seattle that I've noticed is that the meetups in particular are really sort of this entry point to the AR VR community for non sort of developer types. You find that the meetups make the technology more accessible to people who have different backgrounds and who can bring different perspectives to the community to push it forward.
Yeah, so this all pretty much started a little over 4.5 years ago now of Houston VR. I got in about 4 years ago. And so at the beginning, it was definitely very heavy into the gaming side. And we all at Houston VR agree that, you know, the gaming culture is what allowed virtual reality to become a thing again. But in the end, we believe that it's going to be business and industry that really push it forward in the long run, and where most of the money is really going to be for the development and research of it. But so at the beginning, it was definitely much more gaming sided. And we would get little batches here and there of, say, like engineers, mostly it was engineers, and an architect or two here and there that would kind of come in and test out the stuff. And so at that time, you know, we would always get asked, you know, that they would love the technology, but they would ask us, you know, but how can I use this, you know, as an architect or as an engineer? And the thing at that time we would always have to tell them is, it's like, really the only thing you can currently do is maybe export a model out of an AutoCAD file and then import it into Unity or Unreal and just see it in scale in 3D, which is neat in its own right, but it's not really going to do much for it in the long run. But so as time has gone on, we've definitely been seeing more and more of the business side come about. There's been a couple of medical businesses that have kind of grown a little bit out of Houston VR from the community coming together, as well as I believe he's a mechanical engineer that's working on a special IMU unit to do extremely high rate tracking in the form factor of, I don't know, it's like a cylinder, maybe about 1 inch in diameter and 4 inches long, that he's looking at for like military training and stuff like that. But
what's an IMU?
Inertial measurement unit. So like gyroscopes and stuff like that. You know, so we're starting to see more and more of the business and industry side get into it, but still not quite the push that we think it should be there. So again, that's a reason why we're so big into the conference.
Mm-hmm. Hence the ITC.
Yeah, hence Immersive Technology Conference, yes.
Okay, and now talk a little bit about that.
ITC was started 2 years ago. We saw that there just wasn't this push behind the business and industry side of it. And we think it's because for the longest time, you know, VR has never really been a thought in their minds. We found that most don't really know where to go in order to make an application, say for training or anything like this, because they would never think that where they actually need to go is video game companies, because the video game companies are the people that are going to know the Unreal and Unity engines. to run all their training simulations, which, big business has never really had to deal with that before. They would probably never know to ask, about that or even think about it. So ITC is all about bringing those companies together to get them talking about what problems they might have between the industries, so that virtual reality and augmented reality, when it breaks out into all these different fields of, architecture, engineering, aerospace, medical, training simulation, since they're all tied in with virtual reality and augmented reality, one company may solve a problem that another company, say an architecture firm might solve a problem that a medical firm is having. And by them talking and realizing what's going on, they might say, we think you might be onto something of a problem that we're having that y'all might be able to solve for us. And again, propel it forward. It's all about pushing VR and AR forward, but between business and industry.
So that's really cool that ITC sort of is this nexus, this opportunity for people from different backgrounds, companies from different backgrounds to come together in a way that they may not have realized. What are some of the interesting or unexpected outcomes of bringing together these different groups?
Two examples that kind of come to my mind right off the bat is Tobii Eye, which does the eye tracking. On the gaming side, eye tracking is very important for foveated rendering. Foveated rendering is, they say if you take your hand and stretch it out and your thumb is up, kind of like this, and you focus on your thumbnail, basically about 4 widths of your thumbnail is actually what you're able to see in full 100% resolution of your eye. Outside of that area, the resolution that your eye sees actually starts to drop off. And so with this technology being introduced into headsets, what that allows you to do is, if you're tracking the eye, you know where the person is looking to have that 100% resolution at that spot of where they're focusing. And then you can decrease the resolution around it. So that decreases the amount of performance that's required. The power of the hardware that you have, it decreases that dramatically so that something less powerful can actually run those things. That's going to be very, very important, especially in the longer run, whenever they start increasing the resolution on the screens, because that's going to be one of the things that goes up almost every single generation, is an increase in resolution of the screens. When you're doing that in VR, you're basically multiplying everything by 2, because you're having to do, 2 images at the same time. That's very important for the gaming and just kind of the mobility aspect of virtual reality and augmented reality. But also what Tobii Eye and their eye tracking can do is, one study that they've done, and this is actually a recorded talk that we did, and you can look at it on our YouTube page if you just do a search for immersive technology conference in Tobii Eye. They could put these glasses on a new technician in an automotive plant. And so as the cars are going by on conveyor belts, the technician is checking certain points around the vehicle, of the welds of the vehicle, to check for any flaws or see if something needs to be redone. And so what they did is they put the glasses first on a experienced technician who knows what to look at and how long they need to look at it. And then they put the glasses on a new technician, and they were tracking at where exactly they were looking at the car and for how long. And that way they could bring the technician back and say, okay, you're looking at this part of the vehicle that you don't need to, and essentially you're just wasting time. And this spot, you're looking at it, but you're not looking at it long enough, we think, to really see if something is wrong with it, and stuff like that. So it's great for training in that aspect. And then, so real quick, just to jump over to another company called ITI out of Washington. They do crane training simulators that they can, send all over the world. And essentially you can train on how to operate a crane in VR without ever actually using one. And essentially you can take all that knowledge of training in VR simulator and bring it over to a real world scenario. They're also using it for, if they're looking for a crane operator in another country, they might get a response back saying, oh yeah, I can operate a crane. Come to find out that the person actually can't operate a crane. So they spend all this time and money on flying them around, moving them around. They end up just putting them on ditch duty until they find another person who can actually operate a crane. But the system that they have, they can send a Oculus Rift headset and their own proprietary joysticks that hook into a computer that mimic the joysticks that you would actually have in the crane that you would actually be using. So they can send that out and they can actually test the person who is supposedly, saying that they know how to operate a crane, so that way they can actually tell, oh yeah, this person does actually know how to operate a crane. So that's some other pretty cool stuff. And then one other little thing is they also have a trainer for a aerial work platform, one of the little machines where you can climb in. It's a motorized system with wheels. Yeah, and it's basically got a big boom, that can move you around with a basket on it. They mocked up a little basket on top of a moving, a pneumatic platform. So you step up on this little platform, you press the joystick forward and you hit the gas, and the platform swings out from underneath your feet to kind of help you. Yeah. So this is something that I actually tried. I tried it out, but it's the complete mock-up of what you would of all the controls and everything of how it would be actually up in the basket of the platform. And so the platform is sitting on top of this base that has all the pneumatics in it. And so you just kind of step up there. And one thing that I did first off was, since I had never actually operated one of those before, just by seeing where all the controls supposedly were, in the VR headset, I can't see the actual real, platform and everything that's in front of me. So something that I tried out was I actually kind of reached out and felt around to where, I thought the joystick and the little buttons and switches and everything would actually be. And, it was dead on. It was really quite cool that I could actually, reach out and without actually seeing it. And if I didn't get right on it, I could feel that I was close enough to it to then, actually activate the button or the switch or whatever. But yeah, so, it's the way it works is you had a joystick that you would pick the direction of what you want, of where you wanted to go. So that kind of turns the wheels, if you would. And then by pressing on the gas, that would actually make you go forward or backwards. You could use a switch to reverse, and go forwards and everything like that. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And they've now started to slowly implement that technology into their crane training simulator, which is much, much bigger because you're actually sitting in a big chair at that point. But right now it's like a kind of a rumble feature, but I'm sure they're also working on something that will allow you to feel, if you're starting to tilt or something in the crane or too much,
That sounds like there's some serious ROI in training using immersive. What do you see for the future of ITC and your vision of immersive? What would you like to see happen?
Something else that I find really cool about this, and another reason why I'm so big into the conference side of it, is it's really quite amazing to see all these technologies that are coming together to play a role in these peripherals for virtual reality and augmented reality, like the Virtuix Omni or the Infinidec treadmills, or there's the company Axon.
Yeah, they've renamed to Haptics. And
okay, Haptics.
Yeah, they've got they've got some location in Seattle. I don't I think they
Okay, very cool.
I think they have some developers here, but they're based in California.
But yeah, so that's what, to me, the real end goal of the conference is getting these companies together and telling the world, what their problems are. And when you got a problem, someone can solve that problem. We don't know where it may come from or when it may be, but it's got to be out there somewhere to. Yeah, and in the end, it kind of like you said, it's really about being that nexus or that hub of getting these companies together to create, the new world of virtual reality and augmented reality, and maybe in our lifetime we might find something similar to, say, Ready Player One. Maybe not quite the holodeck, but hopefully pretty close.
Yeah, I think what ITC allows for is a forum to figure out what questions we want to be asking with this new technology. I'm reading a book right now called Philosophy in a New Key, and it's all about, well, the first part of it's all about how new ideologies or new systems of thought replace old ones, and what new systems of thought or transformative phases in the development of technology offer is the opportunity to ask totally different questions than the old system allowed us to ask. So I think, like I said, ITC gives us that opportunity, is a forum that gives us an opportunity to allow people of different backgrounds to come together and start to ask.
Well, yeah. So right now I'm not really working on any personal projects. Yeah, I'm pretty much trying to put all my time into ITC and the Houston VR. We've been looking at expanding Houston VR outside of Houston as well. Hopefully, that would again kind of bring this talent to Houston to help develop. So something that I've heard a lot of is everybody who wants to do coding for games, and the entertainment is where most people strive to be, because that's what's fun, and enjoyable. They're not really taking too much enjoyment when they usually get into these heavily, these heavy industry type areas.
It's not the sexy end of the industry.
Yeah. It's not the sexy VR that you want to do.
Well,
but
speak to that. Speak to Houston. How you see the role you see Houston playing, or because always hear about Seattle being kind of this hub. Vancouver's becoming a huge hub. Silicon Valley, is always kind of there. It sounds like Houston's really has some potential to be another hub for this technology. Speak to where the role you see Houston playing in the industry.
Well, yeah, exactly. So we were out at SVVR.
Is that Silicon Valley?
Yeah, Silicon Valley VR. And when people would ask us where ITC is, and we would say Houston, they would usually give us this funny look. It's like, why Houston? It's like, well, if you think about it, we have one of the largest medical industries in the world. Of course, we have NASA right next door. And then, of course, the giant player in pretty much all of Texas is oil and gas. Pretty much any kind of oil and gas company that's out there is going to have some kind of building at Houston.
So it makes so much sense that ITC is in Houston. Now, as well, probably construction and architecture.
Oh yeah, it's quite up there as well. And also with the museums that we have, and we are actually pretty big in the art world as well. It's just not known really by most people of what's actually going on in Houston.
That's awesome. It sounds like you're in a great spot, and bringing a new technology that can bring value to industry. Anything else, I suppose, you wanted to mention?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say kind of going back a little bit on what I was talking about, how I thought it was pretty cool about all these other these industries out there that are working towards, I guess you could call them peripherals and stuff like that. These outlying technologies. What I would suggest to people is one of the big problems right now that we think is going on with virtual reality and augmented reality is it's very siloed in a sense that we all kind of know what we're working on, but the rest of the people don't. And a quick little example, something that's funny is over at NASA, they have a VR lab. And if you were to go to NASA and to another department and say, oh, hey, have you tried maybe running this through simulations or maybe taking this mock-up of this 3D model and testing it out over at the VR lab, they don't know what you're talking about. Even though they're maybe a quarter mile away, on the facility of NASA, they don't know what's going on between themselves. So right now, I think it's very important that people get out there and start talking to other fields outside of their own and really try and think about how VR can be used for another field or how another field can be used in VR and AR. That I think is the big hurdle right now in the VR and AR industry.
Yeah, well said. I totally agree with you on that. Yeah. Well,
absolutely.
Kevin, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, Ryan.
All right. Take it easy.
All right, you too.